Welcome into another episode of Buckeye Cadence. I am your host, Blake Biscardi, joined again by TJ Warner. That means we have another recruiting episode for you guys, recapping official visit season. Plenty of updates for you on the 2027 class for Ohio State, looking ahead to 2028, but also Brady Edmunds and the quarterback situation. What is the latest there? I know that's the hot button topic that you all want to hear about. And then we're going to also have some updates about Marcus Fakatou, David Gabriel Georges, and some other notable players that everyone has been asking about. So, TJ, we're going to continue just to this recruiting series that we have been doing. This 2027 class right now, where we're going to focus on to start the show, is Brady Edmunds and this quarterback situation. What's the latest that you have learned from him being on campus, everything between Ohio State, UCLA, where he's leaning, what he's thinking, inside the mind of Brady Edmunds? Where's he at right now as it pertains to his recruitment?
Yeah, well, he was on campus pretty much the whole back end of the week. He was on campus Wednesday for 7-on-7s with the team there, and Coach Day and the staff got to meet with him all day, and also his little brother was on campus there as well. But then he went into his official visit of starting officially Friday and ended today. It was really a big thing for him to come in there too, because Ohio State's told him, hey, we want to take two quarterbacks in this 2027 class now. And why is that? It's because the uncertainty in the upperclassmen in that room right now. They want to make sure they always have four warm bodies that they can get. And do they think they can get a quality backup in the transfer portal in the future? No. So they're looking to take another quarterback as a boom potential guy in this 2027 class that they can feel like they can develop into a possible starter. So with that, Brady was kind of he was thinking, hey, am I still a priority in this class? And that was what this weekend was about for Ohio State, making sure that he feels like he's a priority. He's still the 6'5", 230-pound pocket passer, prototypical guy. And that's what Ohio State wants, and that's what they need as well. Everyone's thrown out there, hey, they want more of a dual threat guy. With this Julian Sayin offense, it's going to be a pro-style grip it and rip it type guy with Arthur Smith at the helm as well. So this is exactly the quarterback that they would look to have in this type of offense. And they want to make sure that was very clear to Brady this weekend from the OVs that, hey, you're still our guy. You're still our priority. We just want to go to get another guy to make sure we have four next year in that room.
And TJ, when we're looking at this quarterback situation for Ohio State, you mentioned the upperclassmen, like what happens with them? What do you mean by what happens with them? Is there a potential that Julian Sayin potentially plays another year of college football? What would that look like? Would it be here in Columbus? Would it be almost like a Quinn Ewers situation where it's like, hey, you might have to transfer because Arch is right behind you because Tavian St. Clair is waiting in the wings? And if you want a little bit more in depth on this outside of what TJ says on the show, he put out a great piece right before the weekend. So it was on Friday about the future of Ohio State recruiting as it pertains to the quarterback position. tsilverbulletin.com, just a plug there. But TJ, what would that look like, Julian Sayin, if he decides not to go pro after this season? Ohio State has a really difficult schedule, and that's not to say that he's going to play poorly this season or that's expected. He's going to have a lot of opportunities to play on the big stage. But he does have that eligibility, and he does reserve that right. But everyone's kind of thinking, hey, Julian Sayin is going to go pro after this season. Tavian St. Clair is going to be the starting quarterback, and then what? And that's where Brady Edmunds and this second quarterback situation comes into play. So explain that a little bit to the listeners.
Yeah, so you can already see Ohio State staff kind of going through that in the past couple months. They realized, hey, maybe with some of these quarterbacks that we thought was going to enter in this past NFL draft cycle, did not. And now we have, hey, is Julian Sayin really going to be a top 5 guy in the class? And if he's not going to be a top 5 guy, there's more money for him to come back next year and play that season. So if that's the case too, do you keep Tavion St. Clair for his junior season, redshirt sophomore season? I mean, at that point, it's like, all right, he has 1 year to go prove himself, and then he can go to the NFL. And, the goal for these guys is to get the NFL as early as possible. They want to go prove themselves and make 4 or 5 year contracts instead of just having a 1 year deal at Ohio State from year to year. It's just how it is. That there's everyone can say, with NIL, you'll keep guys a little longer, and that shouldn't make it to the NFL in the second or third round, but hey, now that kind of brings us into a Justin Fields situation at Georgia. Jake Fromm was their guy. He led them to a national championship, and they had this crazy good, talented quarterback behind him, but they can't get him on the field because he's there again for another year. And that's why we got Justin Fields at Ohio State. That's kind of the same situation we could be in next year when Julian Sayin, if Julian Sayin does not decide to go to the NFL. If he has a stellar season this year, that's very doable. But if he's not a top 10 draft pick, there's really more intuition and makes more sense for him to come back to Ohio State because he's going to get developed one more year at Ohio State under Coach Day and a great coaching staff and be ready to take that next step and be a top 5 pick in the NFL. Or he can leave and possibly have a bad rookie season and be out of the league by his end of his first contract. And he can make more money coming back in NIL days now too. I mean, he's going to be making $2 to $3 million this year easily as the Ohio State starting quarterback. Now, if you go to the NFL and you're not a top 10 pick, are you really going to be making those kind of numbers sometimes? Especially if you fall down to the second or third round. At that point, it makes more sense to come back to Ohio State. So those are the conversations that are starting to go around. Does Julian Sain come back for next year? And does Tavian St. Clair hit the portal? And how do we make sure that we have 4 bodies in that room for the next year? And for them, they feel like no matter what the case is, they need to take 2 in this 2027 class because they don't think they can get a quality transfer in as a backup.
And TJ, this question may feel like an inferno, so we'll see if you decide to answer it like TJ or a politician. But if you're faced with that situation and you're Ohio State and Julian Sain decides that he wants to play another season of college football, and you have year 3 of Julian Sain starting in your offense, or Tavian St. Clair starting in your offense, or else he's hitting the portal, how does that decision get made by Ohio State? Do you think it's easy, or do you think there's a real debate there? Because what you're saying with this NIL, how it's designed is when you have these guys who are borderline, hey, can we go to league? Should we stay? They have a decent draft grade, second, third, fourth, mid-round to late round guys that you can retain, and they're going to make the more money than the NFL is able to pay like they do in those early round draft picks. So do you think there's a world that Julian Sain's draft grade comes back as a second, third, fourth round pick even? Or do you think this is going to be more of a situation of, okay, I can come back and I can really be a number 1 or maybe a top 10 pick in the following year's draft, and then you have a decision to make between Sain and St. Clair?
I think the big thing for Sain this year is that this quarterback class that we think is going to be this year it should be 5 or 6 guys that we think that are first round talent. But in all reality, are they going to take 5 or 6 guys in the first round in the NFL this year at the quarterback position? I know it's the most important position in football, but are we going to see 5 guys go in the first round? More than likely not. So what does that put Sain on that list? It all depends on this year and how this year shakes up. This is all projection right now. At the end of the year, we could be like, he's a bona fide 2 or 3 guy quarterback in the NFL draft in the next year, and that could clear all this conversation. Tavian St. Clair is the guy next year, and then we're off to the races. But there's a world out there where Julian Sain comes back next year, and Tavian St. Clair is gonna go to the portal. Then at that point, I think even being an Ohio kid, he's not gonna wait till his senior year to start at quarterback. I mean, he's too talented of a prospect to do that. So that's the reason that Ohio State, hey, they're realizing it now. We can't get that quality transfer in as a backup and really a real depth piece that can come in and play minutes for us if needed. So how do we get 2 more warm bodies in the 2027 class and make that room as good as we think it can be?
Because Tavian St. Clair, honestly, he could have tested the waters out in the portal this year, and he could start somewhere. It may not be Alabama, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, but there's places around the country that Tavian St. Clair could start as a quarterback. So next year you would think, okay, this is a definite bona fide starting quarterback, and there just wouldn't be room at Ohio State unless Ohio State were to push Julian Sain out. But again, this is June, and we still have an entire season to play, plus fall camp, and then a little bit more of spring ball before all of these decisions have to get made, and they're all set in stone because now that portal window is earlier in the calendar than it was before. But TJ, this 2027 class for Ohio State, how is it shaping up right now? So official visit season has wound down. We're going to get into the dead period and then the commitment season here. What is the latest that you're hearing about this 2027 class for the Buckeyes? And then who are the big names right now that the fans and the listeners should be paying attention to?
Yeah, so this 2027 class is actually shaping up to be pretty nice right now, and we have some future guys that are committing here in the next month or so. That is really on target for Ohio State. So just to start off, OV season's wrapped up. All the coaches are going off to dead period. They're going on vacation, and this next month is really like commitment season for these recruits. The guys that want to commit before their senior season, get that out of the way. and sign in early December and come on campus by early January, late December as well. So this is a really important month for Buckeye fans, and you're going to see a lot of movement and a lot of different feedback from these kids with how this commitment's going to go for them. And then obviously in August through mid fall, you're going to see coaches trying to hit up some of these prospects and try to flip them. So they'll be on flip watch kind of August through October, and then signing day in December. But right now we're focusing on the month of commitment season for Ohio State. And who are those names? First off, the name that comes to mind, June 25th, Kaylon Bailey out of Glenville, Ohio. That's the linebacker that everyone's calling an edge. He's an Arvell Reese type linebacker. James Laurinaitis wants the third piece in that class. They already have Prince Goldsby. They already have Quentin Cipher. How can he get another one? It's Kaylon Bailey, and that's an absolute hidden gem that people don't know about yet. So James Laurinaitis is starting to put himself in that conversation of Brian Hartline in the next couple years if he keeps getting linebacker classes like he has the past two. So that's the first name that comes to mind. The next name that comes to mind is Marcus Fakatou out of Sierra Canyon in California. The big defensive lineman that came off his official visit back in May 29th on the first OV weekend for Ohio State when they brought in just 4 guys because those were the priority guys for this class the rest of the year. There's a big tell in that. When Ohio State only brings 4 guys on for an OV, that means those are very high priorities for all of them. No matter if they were like Benny Easter committed to Texas Tech, that means he's on flip watch to Ohio State, and we're really pushing for him. DGG, obviously, that's a big battle with Tennessee. Marcus, same way. He had a big top 5 that he had, reduced it to top 3. We're in a battle with Texas right now. I feel very confident with how that the recruitment's going. So I would expect him to be a Buckeye by the end of July. It's just going to take some time to make sure that he's getting his ducks in the order, making sure this NIL is in the right place as well. I hate to say it nowadays, but that's really what it comes down to, making sure the NIL is matching what these other schools are matching as well, to make sure that Ohio State's the place for him. From what I know, he loves the relationship with Coach Johnson, loves the pedigree there. The Chase Youngs, the Joey Bosa, the Nick Bosa of the group, and he just loves the opportunity to get coached by Coach Johnson. That's one that I'd be expecting to be a Buckeye by the end of July, and one Buckeye fans should be really excited about. Another one to look at, just coming off the OV this weekend, Carlos May, big interior defensive lineman out of Birmingham, Alabama. Recruiting prediction machines might have Auburn in the lead. In my opinion, it's a top 2 race between Ohio State and Georgia. And who's going to get that one? I would say right now it's a 50-50 neck with Ohio State and Georgia, but that could change after this weekend once we get intel on how that visit went. And I could see Ohio State coming into the lead and making sure that he's a big priority because everyone keeps talking about, hey, we have no interior D lineman in this class, and I keep telling everyone, hey, slow the horses on that. Big Carlos May, the 6'3", 330-pounder is on campus this weekend, and he could change your mind real quick when you watch his tape and if he commits to the Buckeyes here soon as well. Another one to look at too is how do we round out this wide receiver class? Blake Wong and Jordan Donahue, 2 important wide receiver targets for Coach Hankton, was on campus for an official visit. Blake Wong is a 4-star that has his top 4 out of BYU, Utah, UCLA, and Ohio State. So he's obviously a West Coast kid. That's one that we did a feature on back in March. If you want to go check that out at tsilverbulletin.com as well. There's another plug for you, Blake. I got you there. But that's another one to look into because he's a dynamic inside slot guy that has track speed on the outside if he wants it to, and just to go get it and go catch that ball whenever he needs it. He's one of those kids that Coach Hankton has made a priority in recent weeks as well, and he's felt the love there as well. So having him for his OV and his last OV that he took as Ohio State is big in that recruitment as well. So expect a decision there coming up in the end of July. I would lean towards the Buckeyes here as well. I've talked to Blake multiple times in the past couple months. I think Coach Hankton's put himself in a real good position to pull this one out. And Jordan Donahue is another big receiver. He's 6'4", 185, kid out of Florida, kind of a hidden gem, boom potential type guy. He's unranked on most sites, but I feel as if he commits to the Buckeyes, it's kind of like that Bog Penn Miller type commitment. A guy that no one sees, then Brian Hartline takes a chance on, and boom, he's almost a 4-star at the end of the recruitment cycle. I could see Jordan Donahue being the same thing. He's just a complete athletic freak that has that potential to get developed and be a really good playmaker at the next level. And then obviously, who do we take as the second quarterback in 2027? It's not going to be someone, a highly rated quarterback that you think. It's going to be someone that we go and try to flip later on in the class and try to get another depth piece there as well. And then obviously the big name. I know I'm speaking a long time here, but David Gabriel Georges out of Baylor School. It's down to Tennessee, Ohio State. And I told Blake before the show, like I kept saying it's 50-50. I've always said that. And after the Ole Miss visit, after the Tennessee visit, hype has died down. I'm willing to go on record. I think it's 51-49 Ohio State lean. But I wouldn't say I'm confident in that recruitment just yet. I would say watch out for that one. That one's coming July 22nd as of right now. Definitely between Ohio State and Tennessee. But the recent intel, I would lean more towards Ohio State than Tennessee, but not confidently.
And TJ, that was like drinking from a fire hose. All excellent information. And again, guys, you can listen back to what TJ just said. You can read all of this on tsilverbulletin.com if you want to catch up or just see this written down right in front of you. But TJ, something I noticed is that you're talking very highly of Blake Wong, and I have to say the talent has probably got to do with his name. It just might be me, but it's probably got to do with his name. But we've talked extensively of some of these guys like Marcus Fakatou and David Gabriel Georges and Brady Edmunds. But then you look at a guy, too, like a transfer of Benny Easter, who we've also talked about. But Kaylon Bailey, the linebacker, he's not a guy that we have talked in depth about on the show yet. But I think now is the perfect time to do it with his commitment coming up this week, the lineage, the pedigree that have come, the pipeline of Cleveland Glenville High School with Coach Ted Ginn Sr. to Ohio State, what that means for the Buckeyes to have that connection and that pipeline. Bailey following in the footsteps of Arvell Reese and Sincere Johnson, a lot of similar traits to those players. What about Kaylon Bailey makes him so dynamic and versatile as a player? Because, hey, some guys think he may be an edge. Some think he may be a linebacker. Could he be a hybrid of both? How would he fit into this Ohio State defense under James Laurinaitis and also Matt Patricia? Because he's a piece that would be really valuable for Ohio State on defense. But where would his value come from?
To simplify it for fans, I would say the fans that watched Arvell Reese this year is what his role would probably look like at Ohio State, Kaylon Bailey. But to hear what scouts are talking about is what Arvell Reese was talked about in the NFL draft. That's probably the type of player you're getting with Kaylon Bailey. A guy that people think can rush the passer, think can play like a outside backer that just runs around the field and can make tackles from sideline to sideline with his sub 4.5 speed. The long, super freak athletic, and just a guy that will go in and absolutely fill the gaps and lay the boom when he needs to. A guy that you can spy the quarterback with, put him in pass coverage if you need him to, on tight ends, running backs, slot receivers. He's a super athletic freak that's, again, fits the mold of Arvell Reese and Sincere Johnson. The same type of players that we're getting from Glenville year after year. It's really the same thing on repeat. And it's just, I don't know how they're making those type of guys every single year. It's a testament to Glenville as much as it is to Ohio State for recruiting them every year. So I think Buckeye fans should be really excited about Kaylon Bailey. I think I would consider him a hidden gem in this class so far.
And his commitment date is June 25th. So make sure that you're staying tuned to the socials for his announcement. We will have full coverage of that as well as he makes his decision. TJ, this 2027 class, like we've gone through this a lot in the last couple of shows, but let's almost look ahead to 2028. Now, let's go ahead and turn that page and say, how is the 2028 class shaping up? I know there's a lot of buzz being generated right now from guys that you're talking to, from things that you're hearing, some of the guys. What is it about this 2028 class for Ohio State that's exciting you for the program right now? And why are these recruits generating so much buzz about the Buckeyes?
Yeah, well, to go ahead and start out, we have 2 commitments already from Florida. If you guys are not paying attention to the 2028 class, Jameer Weiss is a defensive line commit out of Florida, 5-star currently. Then Elijah Newman Hall is a running back, absolute stud running back in the 2028 class as well, out of Florida as well. And those are 2 guys that are loving their relationships with the coaching staff, loving getting back on campus this summer during camps. And those are guys that are continuing to not only be committed to Ohio State, but starting to recruit for Ohio State as well. And some of those names that are floating out, I've been in contact with recently. Some of these names, like Jet Harrison. Obviously, we saw a bunch of predictions for Jet Harrison the past couple of weeks to go to Ohio State and continue that lineage. He's been on campus. He hung out with Jameer Brown pretty much all last week when he was there on campus for camp season as well. So that was kind of like a Jameer Brown as like a guide already in the 2027 class. That's how committed he is to the Buckeyes already. But a couple names to go ahead and knock off as well. Braylon Clark, a five-star wide receiver out of Providence High School, same high school that David Sanders Jr. was from. So that's a big high school in North Carolina that produces talent all the time. He said very high praise about the Buckeyes when I reached out to him. Maddox Davis, the Georgia wide receiver, another five-star kid. This wide receiver class could turn out to be something special in 2028. We already have predictions for Jet Harrison. There's buzz for Bryson Wright, Braylon Clark, Maddox Davis, Pierce Washington out of Tennessee, even a big 6'4" kid. This wide receiver class could be something special. And like we said earlier, is wide receiver you bigger than the place, or is it Brian Hartline? That Coach Hankton has a chance in the 2028 class to prove, hey, I got my guys that I wanted. And I handpicked the guys that I wanted in this 2028 class, and he can do that already. He kind of had a slow start in 2027, but had Jameer Brown he'll finish with a 5-star commit, but he can really prove himself in this 2028 class because there's a lot of big names out there that are saying, hey, Ohio State's definitely a school to keep an eye on in my recruitment, and I'd put them as one of my top schools right now if I had to list a top school list. Then there's some big guys out of Baltimore, Maryland as well. I talked to Jermaine Smith Jr. He's a 4-star edge. He's in Rivals on 3. He's currently ranked, I believe, 34th in the country. So he's one of those teeter-tottering with the five-star ranking as well. So that's one to keep an eye on. He's really loving Ohio State. Jermaine Cobbins Jr. He's a corner out of Tennessee. That's a 5-star guy that loves Ohio State, everything through and through. Has a great relationship with Coach Walton and Matt Guerrieri. Those are two guys to look at. Another couple, just going down the list. Max Jones, Geo McKnight, Jalen Edwards, Lucas Proct. Those are names to start look on the board. You'll see it in my 2028 articles later this week of offense and defensive guys to keep on radar. But those are guys to look out for. Big 4-star names that are saying, hey, Ohio State's at the top of my list, and it's going to be other schools having to come in to match what they're doing already. So this 2028 class could turn out a lot better than the 2027 class is already doing because we got our coaches in the line already. As long as there's not big coaching mix-ups this next offseason, 2028 could be a big year for us.
And TJ, you're talking about Cortez Hankton. Yes, he's coming into this 2027 cycle just a little bit late on the Ohio State side, and there's a lot of momentum being generated right now on the 2028 front. What is your confidence level in him as a recruiter from what you saw in him closing 27 and now beginning 28? When you look at him, and we're talking about wide receiver we're talking about Ohio State wide receivers, not Brian Hartline wide receivers, not Ryan Day wide receivers, not Urban Meyer wide receivers, but just Ohio State wide receivers and everything that comes along with that title. And now Cortez Hankton is the position coach in charge of recruiting the most coveted position in the program. When you see Ohio State wide receivers, these recruits, and Cortez Hankton, what is your confidence level like that he's going to be able to continue or even elevate recruiting for the Buckeyes at wide receiver?
Yeah, I think Coach Hankton doesn't yes, he has big shoes to fill with Coach Hartline leaving, but I don't think he has to be Coach Hartline level to produce what Coach Hartline was doing, if that makes sense. Coach Hankton's other spots at Georgia and LSU, that really wasn't his forte of bringing in 5-star guys at either of those places. It was more so bringing in guys from the transfer portal. And we saw that this offseason with how we backfilled our wide receiver room this year with bringing in Devin McEwen and Kyle Parker, some of those type of names. I don't think that's that position that Ryan Day wants to take, though. He wants to say, hey, these are our guys, and we're going to go get our guys and make sure that we develop them the way we want to, so they understand our offense. They understand the way that we do things. Because it's kind of hard to bring guys in through the transfer portal and understand here's our culture, and this is how we do things. Well, you already go to a school 1 or 2 years and then come in and try to learn the Ohio State way. So that's the hard part about that. So I think he's trying to learn, how do I balance bringing in high school recruits at the same time as I'm going after the portals. That's something that Ohio State fans have not understood with wide receiver recruiting is, hey, Brian Hartline never got someone out of the portal with wide receiver. So we saw 2 guys this past year and we're like, oh, whoa, we haven't seen that before. So how do we adjust we take our guys in high school and we supplement in the portal when we have to, but we don't want to do that unless we have to. So I think Coach Hankton's learning how to build those relationships, and he's getting off on a strong foot right now in the 2028 class. He's finishing out the 2027 class as long as we get commitments from the two guys that we think we get commitments from. That I think he does a done deal for that if that's his case. A plus grade for that for keeping Jameer Brown committed, and then also getting some supplemental pieces there. But if you can hit a home run or two in the 2028 class with all these guys that are saying, "Hey, Ohio State's a top school of mine," there's 4 or 5 5 stars right now that are saying that. If you can get a couple of those guys committed and on campus early, then I mean he's doing his job and he's going above and beyond already.
TJ, you're talking about those transfer receivers coming to Ohio State. When I walked into spring practice at the Woody, that was one of the things I was most intrigued to see. What does that look like? Because we don't have a sample size of a transfer wide receiver at Ohio State until now with Kyle Parker and Devin McEwen. Do they look the part? Do they look the part physically as route runners with the ball skills? Culturally, like, do they look the part? Can they fit? And just by the way, that Ohio State obviously evaluates and acquires talent, they're going to at least fit that bill. But comparative to Jeremiah Smith or to Carnell Taylor next to Brandon Ennis or even Chris Henry Jr. as a true freshman, like, what does that all come together to look like? And it looked good. And you see that this wide receiver room had buzz in the spring. It's going to continue to gain more buzz as fall camp and the season come along, when this is going to turn into an on-field product. I think that's only going to increase the attraction for those 2028 receivers and beyond as we get into later years. But TJ, this NIL era can get transactional because there's a lot of money involved. Finances are now a huge thing. You can walk into an office and say, "Hey, coach, this is my number." But relationships are still a very important part of that, especially at a place like Ohio State because of how Ryan Day and the staff operate and the culture that they have here in Columbus. But this Ohio State staff, how they approach relationships, why is that important, especially with the 2028 recruiting class and beyond, with this staff and how they operate and when they're starting to form those relationships? Why is that significant?
Yeah, they're getting on these kids a lot earlier, especially with Coach Bowen and the recruiting at O-line now. I don't know if you've seen in the past couple of weeks, but we've offered plenty of 2028 and 2029 offensive linemen. Same for running backs, same for wide receivers in the past couple of weeks, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Defense side of the ball, we're not as trigger happy on offers, but they're getting out there as well. We're doing a lot more service instead of service recovery at the end being late and trying to make up the ground. They're getting out there a lot earlier and faster to make sure, all right, this is a kind of our new recruiting strategy. We're going to build those relationships for 2 years. We're going to talk about NIL. And then this year, when it comes to 2027, we'll talk about NIL before OVs and we'll bring our guys on OVs. That's the route they're going to go. They want to talk and make sure that, hey, we're going to offer you now. We're going to take the year to build a relationship with you. We'll bring you on an OV the next year. And if that's our guy, that's our guy. That's the new recruiting model for Ohio State. We kind of talked about it a little bit about the 2027 class, but now talking about it now, the 2028 and 2029s, that's their time that they're really offering guys now. Unless you're a late bloomer, there's always the time that the scouting staff will, they'll find some guys that they didn't play till their end of their junior season and middle of senior season, and all right, this is a guy that we should look at and take now. There's always those kind of guys, but they're trying to find guys early on that are playing high school football at sophomore, junior season, and making sure that they get them their offer early, and then can come back and build those relationships for 1 to 2 years before they can even bring them on OVs to make sure they match their relationship at Ohio State and the culture at Ohio State, and do their due diligence up front so they don't have to do with service recovery on the back end.
And TJ, let's go ahead and close the show with 3 questions. And the first one of those questions is going to go back to this 2027 recruiting class. Is Ohio State building one of the best or the best recruiting class in the country for 2027?
I would 100% say they are. They're a team to look out for a top 5 class at the bare minimum. I think they're already ranked top 5, but they will be with a couple of commits that we are waiting to hear from. If they land even 75% of them, we will be right there, square front, looking to be the number 1 class in the country.
TJ, how many 5 stars realistically could end up in this class for the Buckeyes?
I would go on record to say 4.
4 is a strong number.
4 is a compared to 2021 type class. for the Ohio State Buckeyes. So, which is the year that they predicted that, hey, this is the class that we need to win a national championship with. I think this 2027 class could be that for them if they get all the guys that they want committed.
And then this last question here, TJ, what targets are the most important to land for Ohio State or to watch before that signing day, before their commitment day? Like when this class is completely rounded out, who are the most important targets that Ohio State needs to have land?
I think Ohio State fans need to look back to that May 29th OV visit weekend. All four of those guys were there for a reason. Prince Goldsby is already committed from that group. Look at those other three names: David Gabriel Georges, Marcus Fakatou, and Benny Easter. How do we get all three of those guys in this class? I'm not sure how we get them all, but Ohio State is pushing for those three guys. I think we can at least land two of the three. What two are those, and how do we go about it? Obviously, the big name that everyone talks about is DGG. How do we get him on campus, or how do we get him on campus by January? Because he will come in, and doesn't matter if Bo Jackson and Isaiah West both go for 1,000 yards this year. David Gabriel Georges is going to come into that room and play day one, whether it's RB1 or RB2. He's getting snaps and he's getting reps. He's the most important recruit in this whole cycle for us. And if Ohio State can get that one done, that's a big deal.
It absolutely is. And so, TJ, as we do customarily with the end of these shows, what are your closing thoughts here to round out the episode? What we've discussed, the 2027 recruiting class: Brady Edmunds, David Gabriel Georges, Marcus Fakatou, Kaylon Bailey. The list goes on. Then looking ahead to that 2028 class, tying it all together with a bow. What are your closing thoughts?
Ohio State recruiting is on the rise from what it has been a couple years ago. We kind of stalled with having just mediocre in terms of Ohio State classes with top 5 classes, top 10 classes. That's not Ohio State standard. The standard for Buckeyes is, they demand excellence, and this 2027 and 2028 class can turn into that, especially with the hidden gems that they could get in Kaylon Bailey this week. If they keep Brady Edmunds in this class, that's a huge thing for Ohio State. He could be a future starter for Ohio State. That's the big 6'5" prototypical quarterback. If they go out and get guys to add to the defensive line like DJ Jacobs, like Marcus Fakatou, I mean, that's just an automatic defensive line haul. If they add Carlos May to that as well, that's a huge name to add to it as well. And if they get the big fish, David Gabriel Georges, that running back, the guy that will be a 3-year starter at Ohio State and be a first-round draft pick right after, that would be huge for Coach Lockton and the future recruiting for Ohio State as well. And the 2028 class is going to be fun to watch unfold over the next year as well, because there are a bunch of top 100 targets that have Ohio State in their top 2 to 3 schools right now.
Guys, TJ's recruiting coverage has been excellent, so make sure that you are following along on the website, tsilverbulletin.com, to read all of his written work. But also make sure you're following him on Twitter. TJ, tell the listeners where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, at TJ Warner _ on all social media platforms.
So guys, make sure you are going to give TJ a follow. Turn on those post notifications. Everything that's coming out of his account or on the website is quality content, keeping you guys up to date on the latest and greatest that's happening around Ohio State football and recruiting. And then if you guys make sure you're following the outlet, the Silver Bulletin, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's going to be the Silver Bulletin on social media. The handle is tsilverbulletin, and the website, tsilverbulletin.com. Again, guys, make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast, to the YouTube channel. Like and subscribe, share it with your friends. Make sure you continue to spread the word. We appreciate all of you guys for tuning in for another episode of Buckeye Cadence, the heartbeat of Ohio State athletics. And we will see you guys next time. God bless.